On my 60th birthday, the house was silent. No laughter, no music, no candles, just the hum of the refrigerator and the echo of footsteps. That didn't come. I'd told myself for weeks not to expect much. They're busy, I said. They'll remember. But as the day dragged on, no one called. No one came home early. My daughter sent a text, "Can we celebrate next weekend?" My son didn't even bother with that. And my husband, if you can still call someone that after decades of polite neglect, sat in his office, pretending not to notice the date on the calendar. I made myself dinner. 1 plate, 1 glass of wine. I even lit a candle, not for celebration but for light. At some point, I laughed, quietly, bitterly, because it was almost cinematic. The way life can forget you while you're still sitting in it. 60 years of being the glue, the planner, the listener, the caretaker. And what did I get in return? Silence. I went to bed that night without blowing out a single candle. But I did make a wish, to never be this invisible again. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I packed lightly, 1 suitcase, 1 box of letters, 1 photo album. The rest, I left behind. I didn't leave a note. I didn't slam any doors. I just took my coffee, sat on the porch one last time, and watched the sun rise over a house that had forgotten who built it. When they woke up, the rooms were empty. My clothes, my books, my kitchen notes, all gone. The bank accounts were closed, the joint credit cards canceled. The title of the house? Transferred to my name alone a month ago. Something I'd done quietly after realizing they only spoke to me when they needed my signature. By noon, they'd discovered what silence feels like when it's returned. My daughter called first. "Mom, where are you? Are you okay?" I didn't answer. My husband called next. Then my son, panicked, angry. I turned off the phone. Somewhere between guilt and relief, I felt something bloom, a strange, soft kind of freedom. I found a small seaside cottage 2 towns over, paid the rent in cash, and filled it with nothing but quiet. Real quiet, the kind you choose. I started painting again, cooking for one. Learning to sleep without checking if someone else had locked the door. For the first time in decades, I wasn't waiting for anyone to remember me. A week later, a letter arrived. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. My husband wrote, "We didn't mean to hurt you. We just didn't realize how much you needed us." I smiled and folded it back into the envelope. Because that was the problem, wasn't it? They never realized anything until I was gone. On my 60th birthday, my family gave me silence instead of cake. The next morning, they woke up to empty rooms. Not because I stopped loving them, but because I finally learned that love without presence is just habit, and I refuse to live another year as someone else's background noise. On my 60th birthday, the house was quiet, too quiet. I woke up early, baked my own cake, and set the table for 4 out of habit. The same table I'd fed my family at for 30 years. By noon, no one had come home. By 3, I stopped checking the window. At 6, I sliced the cake myself, whispered happy birthday into the silence, and blew out a candle that didn't flicker for anyone else. My husband texted at 8, "Running late. Save me a piece." My daughter sent a message after midnight, "Sorry, Mom. I totally spaced. Let's celebrate next week?" My son didn't bother at all. 60 years old, and not one person in the world who remembered what day I entered it. That night, I didn't cry. I cleaned the kitchen instead. Washed every dish, wiped every counter, folded the towel over the oven handle just right. Then I walked into my room, looked around at the framed photos of birthdays past, their smiles, my effort, and realized every picture had one thing in common: me in the background, holding everything together while they lived in the foreground. By morning, I was gone. I didn't leave a note. No dramatics, no accusations. Just action. My clothes, my art supplies, my mother's jewelry, all packed neatly into the car before dawn. I'd already planned it, if I'm being honest. The savings account I'd opened in my name only. The cottage by the lake I'd been secretly paying for. The second life I'd built quietly, preparing for the day they'd finally forget me. When they woke up, the house was half empty. My husband called first, his voice rough. "Where are you? What's going on?" I told him calmly, "I just returned your gift." "What gift?" he asked. "The silence you gave me." My daughter left 16 voicemails. My son finally texted, "Mom, are you serious? You can't just leave." But I could. And I did. Because for the first time in decades, I realized they'd never see me unless I disappeared. Now I live in a small house by the water. I paint. I drink coffee on the porch while the gulls fight over bread. No one calls me Mom from the other room. No one leaves lights on for me to turn off. And I've never felt more alive. A week later, they came by the old house and found my birthday cake still sitting in the fridge, half eaten, perfectly preserved. My daughter posted a photo of it online with the caption, "Cherish your parents while you can." The irony made me laugh out loud. On my 60th birthday, my family gave me silence instead of cake. The next morning, they woke up to empty rooms, and I woke up to peace. On my 60th birthday, I woke to a house that used to hum with life and now only whispered with appliances. The kitchen clock ticked louder than I remembered. No one had decorated the table. No one had even turned on the coffee pot. My husband had left early for golf. My daughter texted, "Busy day, Mom, love you." My son didn't bother. For a while, I sat there, waiting for something to happen, a knock, a call, a mistake. But nothing did. I'd given them everything. Birthdays planned to perfection. Christmas mornings that sparkled because I stayed up all night wrapping. Dinners served warm when they stumbled home late. I'd made their lives seamless, invisible work stitched through every day. But love that goes unacknowledged turns brittle. It starts to sound like silence, even when people are talking. So I didn't cry. I made myself tea. Poured it into the mug my daughter made me in second grade, the one that said "Best Mom Ever" in uneven paint, and realized she hadn't called me that in years. I looked around the house and saw only proof of everyone else's comfort: my husband's trophies, my son's guitars, my daughter's forgotten boxes in the attic. Nothing was mine anymore. Not even the air. That night they came home late. No cake, no card. My husband kissed my forehead absently, asked if I'd eaten. "I made soup," I said. He didn't notice that I hadn't. They went to bed. I stayed awake. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, I understood, if I wanted to be seen again, I had to vanish first. By morning, I was gone. I packed my clothes, a few keepsakes, the cash I'd been saving for emergencies, and left before the sun rose. I didn't leave a note, just my wedding ring on the kitchen counter, beside the empty teacup. By the time they woke up, the house would look exactly how they'd made me feel: clean, organized, hollow. I drove until the city shrank in the mirror. Ended up by the coast, in a small motel with peeling paint and a view of the ocean. The owner asked how long I'd stay. "As long as it takes to remember who I am," I said. I spent the next few days walking the shore, eating breakfast alone, not checking my phone. For the first time in decades, the quiet belonged to me. When they finally noticed, the calls started. My daughter sobbing into the voicemail, "Mom, please come back. We didn't mean it." My husband sent one message, "You proved your point." He didn't understand that this wasn't punishment, it was liberation. A month later, I bought a small cottage by the sea. I painted the walls white, filled the shelves with books, and kept one drawer empty. Just to remind myself I could leave again if I ever felt unseen. Sometimes I wonder if they ever visit the old house and notice how big the silence sounds without me in it. On my 60th birthday, my family gave me silence instead of cake. The next morning, they woke up to empty rooms. But for the first time in my life, I woke up to something better: space, peace, and a voice that finally sounded like my own. On my 60th birthday, I woke up before dawn, as I always did. The house was still, the same way it had been for years, quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful anymore, just neglected. The calendar on the fridge said June 14th, circled in red ink. I'd drawn that circle myself months ago, hoping maybe this year they'd notice without me reminding them. They didn't. I made breakfast for 3 anyway. Old habits don't retire as easily as people do. My husband didn't look up from his phone. "You're up early," he said, like it was just another Tuesday. My daughter texted me a meme about aging gracefully. My son sent a voice note of his kids singing happy birthday. Cute, convenient, impersonal. No one came. No one stayed. By evening, I set the table out of muscle memory. 3 plates. 3 glasses. Then I put them back in the cabinet. The last candle from last year's cake sat in a drawer. I lit it, just for myself. Watched the wax drip down the side. And thought how ridiculous it was to wait for people who'd already left me emotionally years ago. That night, the silence felt heavier than usual. It didn't hurt, it just settled. Like something that had been trying to tell me the truth for a long time. You are no longer needed here. So before the sun came up, I started packing. Not the frantic kind of packing you see in movies, but the calm, steady kind of a woman who's done being invisible. I filled 1 suitcase with essentials, 1 with keepsakes. The rest, clothes, dishes, furniture, belonged to them. Let them keep it. Let them live among the things I used to care for. When they woke up, they found empty drawers and open closets. My ring was on the nightstand, beside a note that only said, "Don't worry. I'm fine." Finally. They called all day. Dozens of times. My husband, my daughter, my son. The same voices that forgot to call yesterday. I didn't pick up. I drove until the city disappeared in the rearview mirror. Until the air felt clean. I found a small cabin by the lake, quiet and bare. The landlord looked surprised when I paid for 6 months up front. "You planning to stay long?" he asked. I smiled. "I'm planning to be, for the first time in a while." 2 days later, a delivery arrived, a cake. My daughter's handwriting on the box said, "Happy belated birthday, Mom." I threw it away. Not out of spite, but peace. Because apologies wrapped in delay taste just like regret, sweet at first, then hollow. Now, every morning, I wake up to birds instead of voices. I drink coffee facing the sunrise, not a table full of indifference. I've learned that absence isn't always a wound. Sometimes, it's a door. On my 60th birthday, my family gave me silence instead of cake. The next morning, they woke up to empty rooms. And for the first time in 60 years, I woke up to freedom that didn't need anyone else to clap for it. On my 60th birthday, I woke to silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, indifferent kind that seeps through the walls when people have long stopped seeing you. No balloons, no coffee aroma, no one whispering, "Happy birthday." Just the same four walls I'd spent decades cleaning for people who barely looked up when I entered the room. I waited anyway. Old habits die slower than love. By noon, I realized waiting was the saddest tradition I'd kept. My husband called around 1. Meeting ran long, he said, like every other year. My daughter texted, "Sorry, Mom. Work's crazy. Let's celebrate next week?" My son didn't even bother with excuses. For dinner, I reheated soup and ate alone, watching the candle I'd lit out of defiance flicker against a plate that had only one fork. I didn't cry. I just felt still. Completely, painfully still. That night, I sat in my chair, looking at the house I'd poured my life into. Every photo on the wall told the same story, them smiling, me in the background. My life had been the scaffolding for everyone else's happiness, unseen, unthanked, necessary. And I realized something simple but sharp: they didn't forget my birthday. They forgot me. So, before dawn, I left. No shouting, no note, no drama. I packed what I could fit into my car, my clothes, a few old books, and the cash I'd been quietly saving for years. The rest I left behind. I didn't owe explanations to people who only remembered me when they needed something ironed, cooked, or fixed. When they woke up, they found the closets empty, my keys on the counter, my wedding ring beside the cold coffee pot, the bank accounts frozen, the house deed transferred to my name only weeks before. I hadn't planned revenge, but life, when you stop giving it away for free, naturally rearranges its debts. The calls started around noon. My husband first, confused. "Where are you?" I said, "Exactly where you left me. Just finally gone." My daughter cried, my son grew angry. But none of them asked why. They already knew. By sunset, I was 2 towns away, sitting in a small cottage near the ocean, one I'd been secretly renting under my maiden name. The air smelled like salt and possibility. I opened a bottle of wine, cut a small slice of store-bought cake, and whispered, "Happy birthday," to myself. It wasn't lonely. It was sacred. A week later, a letter arrived from my husband. "We didn't mean to forget. Please come home." I folded it neatly, burned it in the sink, and watched the smoke curl into the night. The truth was, I was home. On my 60th birthday, my family gave me silence instead of cake. The next morning, they woke up to empty rooms. And I woke up to a world that finally had space for my voice, quiet, steady, and entirely my own.